There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Well, hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am, Friday Reads. God, this has been a long week. Every day's felt like Friday. By about Tuesday, suddenly my life just completely changed. Maybe 40% of my classes were cancelled with no forewarning. Not that it was a big surprise. Many of my students are elderly. They just didn't want to go out. Plus, even though the Tokyo government is still murderously inept about not imposing a lockdown, because, you know, Japan's really special. We do things differently here. Instead, the Prime Minister of Japan has mailed every person in Japan 2 face masks. Yeah, okay, everything's gonna be fine now. He needs to go to the International Criminal Court. Anyway, even though the government thinks this is no big deal, because the economy is important, who the fuck cares about the economy? Okay, Sean, calm down. This is BookTube, not RantTube. Or ranting about books is fine, but that's what you're here for. Anyway, I am really frustrated. But, so, there aren't very many countries. Germany's doing a good job. Singapore did a good job with no face masks, people. Canada, pretty good. America, what a shit show. Oh my god. Jared Kushner! Okay, there, I feel better. Even though the government doesn't give a damn, certain community centers are shutting down for 2 weeks just out of an abundance of caution. Not an abundance of caution, a minimum of caution, with no national leadership. So those classes that I teach at community centers have been cancelled for at least 2 weeks. And other classes that I expected would move to online video lesson format decided they didn't want to do that. So maybe that's 35-40% of my classes that have just disappeared from my income. And another 40% have moved online, and so I'm happy about that. I've started teaching online, and it's going fine. I think it's so convenient that even if coronavirus goes away in about 15 years, my students and I will probably want to keep it online. It's so convenient, and really, it's a the full-bodied lesson experience. And I'm still, apparently, going out into the world for 2 or 3 classes as of now that have not been cancelled or moved online. So I am at home all the time with not a lot to do. The positive side of all of that is that I have gotten my reading mojo back in a big way. Now, my absorption I don't think is up to premium levels yet, but I'm able to read, for the last couple of days I've been able to read as much, if not more, than I usually did. So that feels good. Let me tell you all about it. Are you sitting down? This week I finished 5 books, and only one of them was kind of a cheat of a book. The others were real books. So I've had if you go by quantity, I've had a great reading week. Last weekend, or I think it was last weekend, I finished Lawrence Durrell's Justine. This was a buddy read with Adam. The buddy read was phenomenal, and the book was to die for. I gave it 5 stars. It wasn't a 5-star experience for me because I couldn't bring 5-star attention to it, but I loved it. And I am going to continue with the Alexandria Quartet. 1 a year, I think. That's a good pace for me with something like this. But I'm going to reread Justine before I go to the next one in the series, which is, what is it? Balthazar is the next in the series. But before I read Balthazar next year, I'm going to reread this. It's hard to describe. It's a novel about a group of friends, many of whom are sleeping with each other in Alexandria, Egypt. Sometime after World War II, perhaps. I didn't pay attention to the time period, as is usual. But really, it's about, I want to say it's about art, but that sounds too woo-woo. It's about fiction and life. In the world of the novel, the central character has been written about in another fictional text, which other characters in the novel, including the protagonist, are using as a springboard for how to manage his relationship with Justine, or how to understand it. And there's a lot about fiction and life being inspired by what's happening in fictional text, and all of that with maximally perfumed, gorgeous prose. It was a breathtaking reading experience, and I betcha I'm going to get tons and tons more the next time I read it. I uncharacteristically underlined and did a lot of marginalia because it just was fascinating. Another big thing in the novel was mirrors, and boy, there would be a PhD thesis in that theme. At various times, it evoked my memory of reading the first couple volumes of Proust in Remembrance of Things Past before I started hating it, because I couldn't finish that. But this reminded me of that, and I hope this doesn't go the way of the Proust, because Proust was far too Proustian for me. I hope my experience with the series, with the quartet, continues to be positive. Right until the bitter end! And this is the slim volume that I read. Another in the Faber stories, Adrien Tomenes. I didn't realize it was a Japanese name because I've never heard that surname in Japan, but he is Japanese American. So in Japan, we would pronounce it Tomine. I don't know how they pronounce it in America, but Intruders. And Tomine is a graphic novelist, and this is a graphic short story. Doris and I will be discussing it, so that's all I'll say for now. Stay tuned for that video in the coming days. And I finally finished Helen Garner's collected stories. This had started out as a buddy read with Natalie of My Reading Days, and she wasn't able to finish it with me, but I finished it this week. I gave it 3 stars because too many of the stories had a slapdash quality, even with gorgeous writing. I just kind of felt like they were notes towards a potentially satisfying work of fiction rather than satisfying works of fiction in and of themselves. There were some gems, especially at the beginning. By the end, I felt like too many of these were too wispy for me. Helen Garner has written at least one stellar novella, The Spare Room, which I heartily recommend. I don't particularly recommend these. And yesterday I finished a couple more. I finally finished Bessie Head's debut novel, When Rain Clouds Gather. And it wasn't very good. It had a lot of things in it that make me want to read more Bessie Head. The story was quite interesting. I don't know when the novel was written, but several years ago, and it's set in the apartheid era, and a black South African man escapes to Botswana, and he shows up in this small village and gets taken in by a white man, colonial dude, who is trying to transform the agricultural practices of the village. So this book was really heavy with agricultural theory and practice, and as a farmer's son and somebody who never really paid attention to the farm when I was growing up, I found that pretty fascinating, but pretty journalistic rather than novelistic. And the characters didn't ever quite come to life. They did... My cutesy way of saying it is they didn't jump off the page, but occasionally they did sit up. Potential, but kind of a dog's breakfast by the end. Pretty unsatisfying. 3 stars. And finally, yesterday I finished Muriel Spark's The Mandelbaum Gate, and it was sitting at a 4-star read for me until the end. And the end was so madcap. Basically what Muriel Spark was satirizing was the spy novel genre, espionage genre, and I'm deeply uninterested in anything like that. But the characters and the complexity of the story about religious faith really held my interest, and it was intricate and extremely well done. I loved the writing. I never did really care about the characters, but I still was swept away by it until maybe the last chunk, where in tying things up, it got so madcap and unbelievable and stupid, I thought. I mean, just because genre fiction is stupid in my books, it just like, no, that I didn't end up enjoying it. 3 stars. But it's better than a lot of Muriel Spark that I've read, I'll tell you. The only Muriel Spark that I recommend is The Driver's Seat. It's a phenomenal work of literature, and I would take a pass on anything else. If you like the way that she sends up genre fiction, Adam taught me back when we were buddy reading a bunch of hers together that's her shtick, and I'm not interested in that shtick. So once I realized how much of this was preoccupied with the spy novel as a genre, I lost interest. It was a little overly preoccupied with all that for my taste, but I'm glad that I finished it, and other readers would probably enjoy it. That's what I've finished. No bails. I'm probably going to bail on that India book, but I haven't had time to bail on it yet. Probably I will. I have started 3. And Beyond the Pages and I have started our buddy read of the penultimate Barbara Pym novel in publication order, An Academic Question. She wrote this in the early 70s. It was published, I think, 7 years after her death in 1980. I've only read 4 chapters. It hasn't sucked me in yet, but often her novels don't until I'm farther in. So I'm not sure that it's going to be a novel that I won't enjoy as much as some of the others or not. I'm not bored, but so far I haven't sensed the wit, the sharp wit of her best novels in evidence here. Fingers crossed that I will. And I've got a bare start on this collection of short stories by the American-Canadian writer Carol Shield, Various Miracles. As I've said before, this was the first thing I ever read by her, and I absolutely loved it. I'm rereading it as a buddy read with Britta Bowler. We have yet to discuss the first story, which is Various Miracles, but I have read it. I'm going to read it once more today, and then share my profound thoughts with Britta. You must be on the edge of your seat, Britta. Upon my reread this week, I thought the first story, the title story, was pretty darn good indeed. And finally, about an hour ago, I read the first 15 or so pages of this little-known Australian novel, The Drowner by Robert Drew. This is for my project. My husband pulled a shelf full of books out of my library, threw them at me, and I vowed to read them all. I'll link to that video, and this is one of the ones on there. I'm not sure after reading 15 pages whether it's for me or whether it's the right time, but I'm not going to make up my mind yet. Basically, it's about some kind of mystical irrigation practice, which was historically practiced in Wiltshire for centuries, and that's the premise of this work of fiction, which then goes to Australia. I just hope that there isn't too much magic in the book. So, yeah, I've had a good reading week in terms of finishing some stuff that I've been reading, and now I've cleared my plate. I will probably finish up some stuff that I was enjoying even more than what I told you about, except for the Durrell novel. And I'm really looking forward to having the time and a bit of a clear head to sink into those and finish them up. I think the only other one that I'm definitely going to start in the next day or two I told you about last time, and that is a collection of short stories by Edna O'Brien, A Fanatic Heart, which will be a story a week buddy read with Sonia of An Enthusiastic Reader. We're going to check in every Sunday. I possibly, for Memento Moriathon, which is probably going to last for the remainder of 2020, this Cormac McCarthy, All the Pretty Horses, but I'm not committing to that. I might start it. I don't know if getting one's reading mojo back is akin to fiddling while Rome burns, but so be it. I'm happy that I'm reading again, and I hope that you are either reading again, if that's working for you, or doing whatever you need to do to get through these shitty days. And that's it. So stay safe and keep in touch. Take care.